Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jessica King and I am the marketing manager here at Techstars. And we really hope that you enjoyed the first session of the Techstars fundraising series. We'd love to know where you're joining us from, so feel free to use the join the conversation feature and let us know. I see New Hampshire over here, also from London. This is so great just to see everyone from all over the world. But yeah, feel free to share your LinkedIn there if you'd like to stay connected. And before we jump into our session today, I just wanted to go through the features of Visibo. So if you have any questions at all, can you please use the Ask the Speaker function? You'll just click on that chat and then ask your questions in there. That way it will help us track the questions easier after the event and also, or throughout the event. And also, we will be sharing the recording of this session afterwards. So you'll get a copy of that to your email. If you missed the first session, we will also share a link to that so that way you can watch both of the sessions together. And then for today's session, you'll be hearing from Christine Hong, Investment Manager of the Techstars New York City Accelerator Program, and also Dave Cass, Managing Director of Techstars Workforce Development Accelerator. If we do have some time for some questions, it will be taken at the end. So we will try our best to get through the content of the presentation today, but just know that we'll be covering a lot. So if we don't have time for some questions, I apologize ahead of time, but we'll do our best. And with that, I'm going to bring Dave and Christine on stage to go through some introductions.
Hey guys, I'm Christine Hong. I am the Senior Investment Manager for Techstars New York City. I'm at Techstars for 3+ years, worked with 50+ companies, so kind of seen the gambit. I've helped companies raise like 100 million plus at pre-seed stage. So looking forward to the session with y'all. And we really want to make this interactive and some more about Q&A. So Dave and I are going to try to keep it at 20 minutes and leave the rest of the time for Q&A. You're muted, Dave, I think.
Dave might be muted.
Always audio issues.
How's that?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. I said, Christine, you're laughing because you don't think I can keep it to 20 minutes. But yeah, our goal is to keep it to 20 minutes so that we can have get through the material and have a discussion. But yeah, as an intro, I'm managing director of Techstars Workforce Development. So I'm the lead investor in that program, and I'm also a recovering founder and Techstars alumni. I went through a long time ago, so use both of those experience to hopefully create a good learning experience with Christine today.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for the intros. I'll pull up your deck now.
Cool. Quick thing. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat, and we'll try to get through as many as we can at the end. The thing with fundraising, it's very specific to each company sometimes. You can get opposite advice for different types of companies. So I want to be really careful here. Yeah.
All right, let's in the interest of time, let's jump in. Jess, I assume you're driving today? All right, let's do it. So last session, I don't know how many people came to last session, but Cardi, another managing director, ran that session. And it was a lot about mindset and strategy. And that's where I think the basis of really strong fundraising is set. And we're doing this ready, set, go process. So today, Christine and I are going to get a little more tactical, but with the strategy in mind from last session. So I may inject some of the strategy points as well. Next slide. And that's the setup for that. So we'll focus on prepping materials and the process management, pitches, and toolkit. Next slide. Okay, I am not a culinary expert by any stretch, but there's a term, mise en place, a French culinary term, that literally means everything in its place. But more strategically, it means that for a great meal to be executed, timing and momentum really matter and are really important. And if you have all of your ingredients prepped and ready to go, you can focus on timing and momentum of the meal. In other words, a great meal Success is predicated upon what you do before you start cooking it. This is the strategic foundation of a really strong fundraising process. However, it doesn't look like beautiful, colorful ingredients like this. It looks like the next slide. You have a spreadsheet, or you have an Airtable. You have some sort of checklist that is a place where you have all your pitches ready to go. You have your investor pipeline built. You have your CRM set up, all of your forwardable emails, all the way down to your financial model, so that when you have that meeting with an investor and they say, we'd love to see your financial model, you're not going to build it tonight. Imagine if in the middle of the meal you had to stop and chop your onions while something was burning. That's how it would feel. Mise en place means everything is in its place. Fundraising begins before fundraising begins. Too many founders wait and say, my round is open. That's when fundraising begins. No, the ready, set stage is where success is really founded. It's in the strategy and having everything in its place ready to go, so that when you're cooking the meal, you're just executing. You're focused on timing. You're getting this thing done, which means, next slide, there has to be a process in place. And like any process, there is a start and there's an end. There's not. I spoke with a founder fairly recently, and I said, are you fundraising? And she said, yeah, I will take money. I was like, that's not fundraising. We'll all take handouts. But you have to have a process in place. And if you're a CEO, this is going to take, and Christine, I'd love your opinion on this too, I think like 70% of the CEO's time. Do you agree with that, Christine? Does that feel like inaccurate?
You mean for overall fundraising, or like their actual time?
Their actual time, their bandwidth within a week.
Oh yeah, I want my CEOs like full-time fundraising when they're doing it, or else it gets dragged out way too long. But I would say, because this is the number one thing that gets rounds to close, yeah, process management is the most important thing.
Yes, perfect. So let's talk about process management a little bit and focus on that. You have a CRM, you have a process for your business development, for your sales initiatives. It's the exact same thing for fundraising. It's a relationship-based strategy, but you have a funnel, and your job is to keep the funnel moving. Now, I didn't indicate direction on that. If it's not moving, it's dying, kind of thing. So think of it like a shark. It has to keep swimming. Moving could be in the negative direction. There's nothing wrong with getting a no in the fundraising process. You're going to get a whole lot of them, or moving it forward, because you want to create this feeling of genuine momentum and genuine scarcity. Like, don't ever fake that. Investors will sense it and be able to read right through it, and then you lose trust and it's not recoverable at that point. So a really structured process, and I'll go over that in the next few slides too, to keep the process flowing, but you're also keeping communication flowing as well. You should be having updates and good news and momentum, and here's how traction's flowing, but stay super honest about challenges too. This is what I'm struggling with. This is why I'm looking for this type of investor. Don't hide challenges too. Every investor knows that every startup has challenges. If everything is going great and smooth, well, maybe you don't need Techstars or an investor. So stay real honest. Over communicate in order to keep it moving. The thing that will kill most deals is time. So I'll go back to having a start and finish with the process. Just keeping around open forever is like, if anyone's ever bought or sold a house, it's like a house that's on the market forever. You just kind of forget about it. So keep that moving. Have a rough timeline. You can go to the next slide. Just to set yourself up. So one before this. True success is having everything in place before it starts. When your round is open, you're ready to go. So before week one, everything is in place. Going down that checklist from your decks, your one pager. We'll come back to data room because I have some different opinions on that. So that when week one is ready to go, you've already reached out to your investors that either you reached through a warm intro. Those are the two ideal, I'm not anti-cold reach out, but it has to be extremely thoughtful and concise, which is very difficult to do. It has to be very personalized towards that investor. I get those blanket emails every single morning. That is clear, like my name was just mail merged into it. It has to be very, very personal. So the goal pre-week 1 is that you've done your outreach so that weeks 1 through, I think it can go into week 3, are set for investor meetings. I call them intro meetings, but it's not a meet and greet. It does have objectives. I think the founder objective in that meeting is you already have a hypothesis that you have alignment with this investor. I think the best thing you can do in that first meeting is to confirm alignment, and your goal is the next meeting. You're not in that first meeting closing deals or seeking checks. If you're confused about what is to be accomplished in that first meeting, just ask. Different investors maybe like to run their meeting different. Would you like to lead it just as a discussion? What areas would you really like to dive into? I really want to make the best use of our time. And these are my objectives for the meeting too. Your objectives matter just as much as the investor. So set those objectives in the meeting, get a sense of how they like to run a meeting, and execute it so that in weeks 4 through 6 or so, you're drilling down into the business. You're drilling down into the you want to get to know your team and the business on a much deeper level. I do think in the second meeting you can ask for a soft commitment. However, it's probably contingent on a few pieces that are important to them. You're creating momentum. You're creating scarcity at this point, so that weeks 7 through 12 or so, they're diving into your data room. They're following up to ask questions. Like, I saw this thing in your deck, and I'm confused by this, and I have a question. Investors love to send you on scavenger hunts early in the process. While they may not be committing to investing in your company, that's okay. You can commit together to a timeline. That's why you have to have a start and finish in your process. We're opening our round on this date. I'm taking intro meetings week 1 through 3. Then I'm seeking commitments. Then we're in diligence. I am closing the round on this date. And then you close the round on that date. You can always oversubscribe, but I recommend, if you have a range that you're building, to communicate the lower end of the range. Everyone's happy if you oversubscribe, but if you undersubscribe, you might lose momentum. Investors might get a little miffed by that and potentially even back out. So that you're closing, next slide. Ideally, you're running at most a 6-month process, and it's going to move really, really fast. With those final few months, you have your soft commitments. You're closing the deal. Okay to oversubscribe. That's a general flow. I'll pause here to see if Christine or anyone has any feedback or wanted to add into that flow at all. If not, I'll jump into the.
I don't see anything in the chat, so you can move. By the way, you can control the slides yourself by hovering over them.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Key tools, that is in the that was in the spreadsheet screenshot that we jumped into too. You have your target list ready to go and your investor pipeline. Those initial meetings, I don't recommend you meet first with your most ideal investors. Get a couple meetings under your belt. The basis for communication is the investment memo, and Curry spoke about that in the last. Knowing that your potential investors are writing an investment memo, you're writing it for them in these meetings. Not literally, you just know what the content is. You're driving the discussion so that they are writing their investment memo exactly how you would want it to be written. It's your story, it's your company, it's your narrative. Everything from your elevator pitch to your demo day pitch to your materials will feed into writing that investment memo. For those initial meetings, I like a one-pager to be sent before, because no one's going to really do more than it gives a glance. It gives a setup for the meeting, and in that first meeting you can say, would you like me to follow up with the investor deck? What would you like to see today for us to move on to for the next meeting? That's where you can have the drill down decks. I like to have the financial model open. More times than not, you'll talk about the financial drivers of your business. They won't necessarily open the financial model. Financial model, the real value is in building it because it gives you the ability to speak about it, talk about the drivers and the scenarios and that sort of, and that sort of thing. I hit elevator pitch. Elevator pitch is a good way to start a meeting, but don't jump into a meeting and just sit down and just start launching into your elevator pitch. An elevator pitch requires consent. And what I would say in the beginning of a meeting is, I understand you probably have a lot of these meetings. Would it be helpful for me to, just for context, to do my elevator pitch, to just give you context of this meeting? 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you knock out your elevator pitch. Jess and Christine and I were talking about the other day. This elevator pitch slide in my accelerator, this is a 2-hour workshop that I do with the founders. But at its minimum, your elevator pitch has to include who you serve, what problem they have. If your listener doesn't have the problem, can you establish empathy in this elevator pitch for that problem? And then the solution you provide, the benefit. Don't jump into all the features of your product, but the benefit. How is the life changed by using your product or service? If you want to add a little bit more about how you're different than a competitor or how you make money in the business model. But my recommendation is to give it as short and concise as possible, and then say, let's dive into anywhere, or would you like me to elaborate on any of these pieces? Again, elevator pitch is a whole skill in of itself, but it can often set up the context of the meeting. I do that in all my mentor meetings. Just give me your elevator pitch so I can put myself into the mindset of your team and your company and your business. It's a great setup for the meeting. And I'm going to hand over to Christine.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm just going to pick up where Dave left off, intro, email, and forwardable templates. So I would say the most effective way to get an investor meeting is through a warm intro, not a cold email. So, where you can do it, obviously, if you have no other route, cold emails can work. I'm a huge fan of the warm intro email. So it's warm, not cold, right? And same with closing customers as well, especially enterprise stage. So basically make sure you find someone who, the referrer actually knows the person well, or at least has a good reputation with them. But we don't have other enterprises. Beggars can't be choosers. So anyways, the biggest thing we like to talk about is people want to help you and do intros for you, but don't make them do work, or else that's going to get a delayed intro on your end. So basically just going to quickly talk about forwardable email template and the ideal way to get warm intros. So Alex Isco, one of our old MDs, wrote a great article on this. You can just Google how to write a forwardable email and it should pop up. But basically, this is a little small, but this is a real intro list request that I've received. So she did work for me. I hadn't talked to her in a year. This wasn't one of my portfolio companies. She gave me an update on where the company's at. She gave me a purpose. She's looking to raise money. And then she looked through my LinkedIn already and listed investors relevant to her that I could introduce her to. That way it's easy for me to just reply, yes, did three names, and go ahead. Then here's an example for my portfolio company. Once you get a list of LinkedIn's that I'm opting to introduce you to, don't make me write the email for you because I don't have time. I have to do a bunch of intros every day. So Rachel wrote this forwardable for me. So the subject line's really clear. I actually would optimize this by flipping it. Intro for Rachel, off market to Amanda bullish, because Amanda's going to be receiving this. And she gets tons of emails of her name in the subject, right? So she just wrote hey, Christine, thanks for passing along this note. And then she wrote a little bit about her company. And then, I think she can be a little more specific, love to chat about our fundraiser or whatever, but it's fine. So all I have to do is press forward. I forwarded to Amanda. I was I really like working with Rachel. She's a go-getter. Let me know if you like an intro. It's really quick. Amanda replies. And then I just loop in Rachel and we're done, basically. So if you use this simple strategy, your warm intros are going to convert way better. I'm a huge fan of the forwardable email template. Next, we're going to talk about, it's a shame, Dave, because I feel these topics could all be an hour workshop, but we're trying to give you an overview. So
yeah, this high level for sure, no question.
Yeah, this is very high level because each of these could be like an hour plus workshop. Okay, teaser deck and our one pager. So I usually just have my founders do a teaser deck. So basically, it's like because you already have a deck you need anyway. So the ideal is you have 3 versions of your deck, right? So you have a teaser deck and you want to keep this to 10 slides max. And the only goal is to like get you the meeting. So it needs to be like quickly skimmable, readable. I can understand it without you talking about it. Frankly, I'm going to spend like max 10 seconds looking at it. So the first couple of slides better be like pretty eye-catching or I'm dropping off and I'm not taking the meeting. So that's a teaser deck. Keep it 10 slides max. And then during that meeting, you can have a longer deck, which is, I'm going to go into more detail on that later. But basically, if you were presenting your company during a meeting, you would go over a deck and you would tell the narrative of your company. This is going to be like max 10 minutes of the meeting total. So you're probably going to talk about it for like 2 minutes, get interrupted. Questions from investors, get back, interrupted. So just really want to emphasize that. And then you have a third version of deck, which is the drill down deck. And basically this is going to have like way more details.
Christine, can I add that getting interrupted is great.
It's great.
Not getting interrupted. If you finish an entire pitch and you weren't interrupted, that's when I might feel a little,
Oh, yeah, because my main job as an investor is de-risk investment. And I basically only don't ask questions if I'm like checked out and I'm going to pass because I'm not interested in this business. So I'm just nice and say bye. But actually, I usually don't do that because I usually like to help them tell them the reasons I wouldn't invest. But anyways, back to the deck. After is the drill down deck. So this is going to have more details. This is going to like very naturally happen. Investors going to ask you questions like, hey, I don't really understand the business model or the market size. And you're just going to like kind of, you can write it in the FAQ, but eventually you're going to get certain, and you can just copy and paste these answers easily. It's just a Google Doc of answers. But eventually you'll probably get asked the question so often, you're just like, I'm just going to put on the drill down deck basically. And then basically like, let's say you talk to an associate for your first meeting, when they're at their partner meeting and the partner asks a question about the business they can answer, they can just like look through the drill down deck and like show the answer. And we're talking about the financial model as well. So I'm not going to go into too much details, but Dave is a trailer, not a movie. So that's why designs really, really matters. And all you need is to get the meeting. You don't need to explain the entire business. Just make me intrigued enough to meet you. This is an example one pager. I mean, if you wanted to go into designing this and making this look good, cool. But I rather just do a teaser deck because you can use the same design for all 3. So the investor meeting with the appendix. This is for when you get the meeting, right? So when the meeting starts, I will always ask the investor first, like, do you prefer a deck presentation or we could just do an informal chat? I honestly feel like most investors are starting to lean more informal, including me. I don't like deck presentations because then the founder just talks for 10 minutes and I'm just like, no one can pay attention that long. And I just like check out and I still am going to ask the same questions you just addressed, basically. Like humans don't have a high attention span. Just remember that, right? So you want to have this deck anyways on the go because you can pull it up later for questions. But usually I just prefer an informal pitch in the beginning. And then I just want to be able to ask all the questions I can de-risk you. So my advice is if they want the deck, do it. And they'll interrupt you. That's their process. If they don't want a deck, be prepared for your like 1-minute elevator pitch, which Dave just talked about. And just prepare for the rest of me and just be like them asking you questions, de-risk the business. And this isn't on here, but my last question I always like to have founders ask the investor is, based on what you've seen today, what are the top reasons you would not invest in this company? Because it forces the investor to think and tell you, and that's going to be, if you get consistent feedback each meeting, I would really look into like fixing that in your business or addressing it on the presentation, because that's going to be a common pass reason for you. And investors are just too nice sometimes, too tired, and they're just not going to go like heads down tell you what the feedback is, and it's usually too late to ask after they pass on you. So this is like the main time you can ask this question. Okay, so investment deck format. these are like the main things you're going to want, and you'll get more details in appendix, but it matches the pitch, right? You have your vision, your mission, problem slide, solution slide, how it works. It doesn't have to be a live demo or video, but it can just be like steps 1, 2, 3, and you explain it. Business model, how you're going to make money, always important. Go to market. I usually keep if it's like special. But if it's just like, hey, we're going to do like paid ads or email people, like I'm like, cool, every business is doing that. So I want to know your unfair advantage for go to market. So I would only put that slide if you have unfair advantage. Market size is super, super important. One thing, if you don't understand this, is Google how to calculate bottoms up TAM. Don't do top down size because it's much less accurate and most investors prefer bottoms up. So I'll give you an example, right? I'll see a company that's like, hey, so we're working in the recruiting space. And they'll just be like, the recruiting market is $10 trillion. That's the market we're going after. I'm like, okay, sure. But some of that money is getting paid to human recruiters. Some that's going to other software for other types of companies, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what percentage of that market you're getting, right? So that's not a real number for how big you can get. So a way to calculate bottoms up TAM is basically just how much potential revenue can you make a year times how many potential customers can you have ever? And that's your potential annual revenue for me. And I want to see that be at least 20 billion or else I'm very worried. You won't be able to raise an A. So I can talk all day about that. So feel free to Google it or ask me questions, maybe sub questions there. But next slide, obviously, competition differentiation. Very, very important for competition. Have everyone that is both large enterprise competitors, direct and indirect, and small startups that are like seed stage startup, direct, indirect. If you don't have the seed stage startups, I'm assuming you haven't done your diligence and you don't actually understand your competitive landscape and how you're differentiating. It's fine if the company's doing something very similar to you and it's like a seed stage funded company or even Series A, as long as you have a plan on your initial wedge to beat them. Like maybe they're focusing on a different audience first, or they just believe like this method is going to work, this feature, this method of solving a problem versus your method. That's fine, but you need to have clear opinion there. And if you don't, I'm like really worried, honestly. A benchmark I know an investor does for a meeting, if he says if there's 0 seed stage startups and that he can find doing something similar, he's going to pass because the market's probably too small or else that company would exist. If there's 10 plus, he's going to pass because it means it's way too crowded and he doesn't know how they're going to differentiate. If there's 2 to 3 direct competitors, seed stage, perfect. He's probably going to take the meeting. That's just a benchmark for you. 10, moat. What do we mean by this? A lot of us are looking for like a way you can remain defensible over time. Like, what is a way that someone, if A16Z funded a company tomorrow with $100 million and give them a bunch of engineers, how will this company not catch up to you and destroy you, right? So you need to be really clear on that, just for not just for your business, but also for talking to investors, obviously. So I think an example I can give, I could use like Clay. Actually, I don't know if all of you know what that product is, so I'll just do Uber. That's like the very easy one, right? They have a moat from their network of drivers, because if I built a rideshare app tomorrow and just magically built the Uber app tomorrow, it's going to take me time to have the network of drivers in New York City that they already have been accumulating over years, right? So that's a moat that makes them defensible, right? Next, obviously, TMYU, just mentioning founder market fit items you have. Traction. I'd be very careful in the timeline, milestones, roadmap slide. You can kind of do it, merge it with your use of funds slide, where it's like, use of funds. I don't care. You're going to hire 3 engineers and 1 designer or whatever. You're going to pay for conferences of it. I really don't care. I want to know what milestone you're going to hit with the amount of money that you're asking from me. Because if you can't hit those milestones, you can't raise next round, or like if you want to raise, right? So like that's what I'm thinking about. And then financials projections. That'll be a version of your financial model. We're going to talk about that next. Cool. For sake of time, I'm actually going to go pretty fast here. Basically, when you're thinking about your pitch development, top down, you want to think, humans have very short memories again, right? Remember, like people you're pitching are getting hundreds of pitches, not that like every week, right? So it's like, how are you going to stand out? If you talk to an investor while they're drunk at a party, like what's the one thing they're going to remember tomorrow when they talk about you, right? And I'll usually be like, man, I met this really cool company last night. She's using AI to basically do drug discovery, and it sounds like it's like 100 times faster than the normal process and like 50 times cheaper from what she told me. Cool, great. I don't know how she's doing it, but I'm intrigued to know more, basically. So, like, what's that one or key phrase you want someone to keep saying about you, right? So that's top down. That's the overall mission you want. And then bottoms up is like one phrase per slide that's going to build up to it, right? So for this AI biotech chick, who is currently my program, basically, it's like, here's the problem right now, like drug discovery is not able to be done through functional access, so a lot of things have to be spent on that, right? She does the solution. She talks about how she's solving it. She talks about how it works. She talks about how she's found a market fit, and she's been studying biology and doing drug discovery, and also has computer science background, so she's a unique blend of that, right? So all of that, how it leads to that overall mission of making that story. So that's kind of how I would think about narrative and pitch. Tools for follow-up meetings. So drill down deck. This is basically like the additional details you're going to get asked. It's going to be very clear as you keep getting asked the same questions. You're like, okay, I like think I need a deck to like answer this question. So I'll just make a quick slide on it to aid me in investor meetings. Financial models. So Dave mentioned this as well, so I'm not going to go too hard into this, but you should make this yourself because it's not just for investors. This is for yourself. You want to know, if I spend money on these employees, or I spend money on these tools, or I do these things, or I increase my pricing by this much per month, how's that going to affect my bottom line of the business? How's that going to affect when I'm profitable? How's that going to affect when I'm going to run out of money to raise my next round, right? You want to know that inside out, or else your business dies. So, I mean, the big thing is like, it's really hard to read a model as an investor, and just a lot of investors are going to be like, can I get your model? And they just want to email it, and they're going to look at it and be like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Or they make a wrong assumption. They just pass. So I would just always say, like, happy to share my model with you. Let's hop on a quick call to talk about it, so I can explain it to you. And also gives you a chance to have your third meeting with the investor, right? So explain the drivers. In the assumptions tab, all of the worst thing about a model is when things are hard coded. So I see like revenue is like 10K for this month, and you just assume 20% growth month over month, and it's just all hard coded. I'm like, okay, cool, but like, where is that coming from? Is that 20% that doesn't change every month, and that's going to be affected by like, I want to know what factors is affecting that growth. Is it like how much I'm spending on outbound? How much I'm spending on ads? Is it based on how many engineers are hired to get there? So that's just some common mistake I see. Honestly, we have a 2-hour plus workshop on models that we do. So, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I can't go too long on this. Data room's going to cover like even more information that once you're getting granular, like you shouldn't really be sharing this until like you're close to investment committee stage, like the final round, but they're going to want to look at your cap table now. Does that look okay? Things like that. So key contracts. Yeah. Make sure everything's cool. So we want to leave the rest of this time for Q&A. I don't know, Dave, if you have anything to add before we get started.
I'll ask a question on the last slide that might set up questions. I'll save my opinion to after yours on this, but how do you feel about the investor in that first meeting, first interaction? It's show me your data room. I just, can I have access to your data room? You haven't met with them. You haven't had a discussion.
Yeah, I would hold back and just be like, well, first of all, you don't understand my business, so why don't we just like hop on a quick call? It could be of interest to you. Here's my teaser deck. Because data rooms take a long time to look over. I'm not going to spend time looking at that if I'm not interested in your problem solution. If I'm asking for it, I'm probably just asking for a link so I can put it on my CRM and be like, hey, later, my boss, I did talk to this company. Here's all the info on them.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think people that just want an early stage investor, a true one, wants to get to know the founders. And I just want to be a looky-loo in your data room is avoiding getting to know the founders, so I don't consider them a serious investor. Also, you might get lost. I need to give you the tour. I need to tell you the story. I could just show you my financial model, but I'd rather tell you about the financial drivers. I'd rather tell you about what's happening with it. I would avoid that. Some push it a little bit, and I have seen some founders successfully have. First of all, I would share. We don't, as a policy, we don't share data room until a soft commitment is made. But you could have an introductory data room and keep it minimalistic. Like my one pager's in there, my investor deck is in there, maybe my financial model, maybe not. So I like founders. I don't think I'm in the majority of this to have two data rooms, an introductory one. Yes, I'll show you this introductory materials, but my full scale data room I don't share until there's an offer.
Yeah, I completely agree. Should we scroll through the questions? It looks like there's the most voted, so we can scroll to the top.
Yeah, I'll actually help you out with the questions
thanks.
there. Yeah, not a problem. So just for everyone with the questions, if you can just do us a huge favor and use the ask the speaker function to ask your questions. We will not be going through them from the join the conversation feature. It'll just help us track the questions easier. And also, if you could just upvote for the questions that you see. We'll try to get through as many as we can, but upvoting helps us to know which questions to tackle first. So I can actually cover the first one, which is I attended the first session and I didn't receive the recording. Will the session recordings be available? So yes, you should have received an email on the 14th if you attended that session. And if you didn't receive it, it might be in your spam folder, or you can also view it here, and I will put that in the chat for everybody for the recording. We'll actually be making a playlist, so this second part will also be included in that playlist. And we will be sharing the recording as a view here, so you'll be able to view the deck that Christine and Dave went through, but we will not be sharing the deck separately. So just want you to keep that in mind as well. Okay. Here we go with the first question. What does traction look like for pre-seed versus seed? What is a typical runway for pre-seed versus seed?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer because it totally depends on where the market is at the time in terms of like how much money is out there right now with investors, and also for your particular company, like how much interest there is in this space, right? Because I think you'll see, of course, there's a lot of AI infra deals a couple of years ago, right? And they're just super high and people didn't want to lose out. So there's plenty of zero traction that raised full rounds. Yeah, I would say seed is they're kind of just blended together. Some people would jump straight to seed. I've seen people raise seeds off zero traction, just jump to it. It can depend on your network, but if the market's sexier, it can be easier. If it's like not a clear why now market, or like, a lot of similar folks have like been there and died. I would like to see like both your philosophy and why you're going to win, but also hopefully more traction, like more ways to de-risk it. Traction is a way of de-risking an investment, right? So sorry, I didn't have a real answer, but that's honest answer. Yeah.
Would it be helpful to share we're a pre-seed investor, and an accelerator is a pre-seed investment. I'll share quickly what I look for in a pre-seed. I'm going to say I don't care about revenue at this point, and then I'm going to contradict myself and come back and say I do care about revenue. But that will make sense. I think a true pre-seed investment, first and foremost, is about the team, and I'm looking for strength and balance on that team. If it's a team of all MBAs, I know nothing is ever going to get built. And if it's a team of all engineers, I know nothing is ever going to get sold. So strength and balance on the team is the big thing. They need to have an MVP that is in the hands of customers in some way. It can be a little bit gross of an MVP, but it's working and it's functioning. And when I say in the hands of customers, doesn't necessarily have to be paying customers. Could be pilot customers. Hopefully they're paying a little. And I'm interested in what you're learning. How is this company a learning machine? Because I know the company's going to look different in 6 months from now. So I know the startup road is going to be very windy and very bumpy, so I'm trying to get a sense of, does this founding team have four-wheel drive? So team, pilot, what are they learning and what are they gathering from those pilots more important than revenue? I don't care about revenue, but then I lie a little bit and say I do care about revenue, because when I see it, I feel good because it tells me that founder went out and sold something, and that's really hard to do. The reason I say I don't care about it is generally at the pre-seed stage, the revenue is not necessarily the scalable, repeatable revenue yet. So it could be a false positive, it could be a false lead. So for me, it's about the team, the product, what are they learning and how are they learning?
Great.
Yeah, I think quickly add on to that. There's more than one way to show traction and optimize your application and deck to investors. Like Dave mentioned, quantified LOIs. Even if you haven't actually gotten a revenue yet, can you prove that people are like, because maybe you're working on a green hydrogen project that's going to take a year to build, right? That's the founder I had in my last company, but he was like, no, but we have a bunch of demand. I was like, well, can you prove it to me? And then he just like sat down and like got like 10 million in like quantified LOIs in 2 weeks. Actually, that's an extreme example, but it just like de-risked it for a lot of investors basically, because they're like, okay, demand, not risky. We show there's people who actually pay for this. Now we have to just see if we can build it, and that's another risk. But traction is just a way to de-risk, right? And we're also looking at growth. The important number of investors up for is 20% month over month growth usually. Because I've seen companies with like, they've been around 4 years and like they apply and they have like a monthly revenue of like 50K, which looks really impressive for pre-seed, but it's stagnant or it's decreasing or it's inconsistent. And then I'm kind of curious why they're not growing. Yeah.
I think it's a great point. Traction can come in a lot of different forms. I saw a product yesterday from a founder that was really coming far. It was looking good. He's become a solo founder. I was like, how have you done this as a solo founder? He said, I have 11 people volunteering to help build this. It's a little bit of a sign of traction in a way. It's attracting people to jump on board.
I actually have a question to follow up because I see it's actually about traction. So we're going to jump around a little bit to get to this one. But when it comes to traction, is it more important to actually have traction or have a good story? Is it better to have a strong narrative but a little bit of traction? Or what if you have solid traction but your deck isn't great?
I'll take a stab at it. Christine, you can tell me where you agree, disagree, or add on. I think it depends. First of all, it depends on the stage that you're asking that question. I'm going to assume it's a pre-seed. A pre-seed. First of all, the story is always important. Very, very important. You can only raise on a vision once, and I think that's in the pre-seed stage, but you still have to have traction that we just talked about. You've built a team, you've built an MVP. I think within every pitch, you have to have a theme of both vision and evidence. Vision is evidence is you have some proof that you can do and say what you're building and where you're going. It could be in the demand, it could be in the LOIs. So you have to have evidence, but vision is where you're heading. And I think a good pre-seed pitch has to have both vision and evidence. So I wouldn't say one is more important. You need both. But to Christine's point, if you've been around a little bit and there's not evidence, the question is why.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the ideal answer is both. Dave basically hit it. Pre-seed, I'm mostly looking at the founding team and where this company can go and where this market can go. So I would say story is actually the most important because that's what gets you in the room. That's what gets you customers. That's what gets you employees to work for you, right? That's what gets you funding. Obviously, traction matters in the sense of like you have validated your demand and you can prove it to me. If we can prove that with the market somehow, with the story, okay. But obviously, if I have a company with similar market and team and traction, like I kind of know which option I prefer.
Part of the story too, Christina, I could just like end up tagging on stuff for hours. Part of the story is with the stories about you and your why behind this. Lived experience is really important to me as an investor. How do you know about this problem? Because that puts your proximity to the problem. And I start to get the why someone, and I'm very drawn to founders, and it's part of my investment criteria is founders can stay very committed to we're looking for contradiction in founders, very committed to the problem, not so committed to their current solution, flexible and current solution. And lived experience means they're on fire about this problem. They'll stay committed to it, but we just both know the solution is going to change over time.
Yeah, I think the answer to the unanswered question, unasked question is actually, when should I be fundraising, right? The pre-seed raise, when should I do it? At what stage of traction? My answer always to founders first is, when do you run out of money? If you're running out of money in 3 to 6 months, you have to just start fundraising now, because it takes that long to fundraise sometimes, right? And it is what it is. The traction is what it is. Hopefully the co-founder can like keep increasing that while you're fundraising, but you're just going to go in with the story. If you have more time than that, I will always push my founders to get more traction, validate product market fit as much as possible. And that's going to change the narrative in a couple months even, because they're going to learn way more about their ICP in those next couple months as they get paying customers. So that's where I see usually a pre-seed. And I think someone else asked the typical size of pre-seed round. I forgot to answer that. I would say like 1.5 to 2, and then seed, I'd see like 3 to 5. Obviously, like you want to approximate for 1.5 years of runway, but that's like ballpark what I see.
Great, thank you both. Is it a red flag to ask an investor to sign an NDA before sharing financial modeling details?
The founder asked, yeah. I mean, it's not a red flag, but it shows when the founder's very green and like new to fundraising, doesn't get how it works. Because, I mean, you can't really hold up these NDAs in court, to be honest. Like, they're really non-effective. Yeah.
I guess another way I could ask that question is, does Techstars sign NDAs?
I don't know anyone who does here. Investors are going to want to be connectors. They're going to want to talk about your business. I agree with Christina. I don't necessarily think it's a red flag, but you are showing a level of amateur. I think if you do that at that point. I also don't think a lot of investors are in the business of like stealing ideas. We're looking for great founders. We want you to build and run the company, and we're supporters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think investors are very aware, like if they're sharing a deck around too much and the founder's your back, that's not a good look on the investor. Yeah.
Great. Okay, I have heard that VCs are not excited to invest in a company that has previously raised angel money. Is this an accurate opinion, or can I get your opinion on that?
It probably depends on who the investor is. Some, yes.
Oh, that's not true for me at all, unless you're raising like 2 mil plus on angels, and I'm like, why didn't they do a VC, I guess? Yeah.
There's a reason angel investors exist, and it's to bridge this period of time. And I always think, where is the company on their journey? Are they pre-seed, seed? I don't think it's strange to have angels on the cap table at all, unless it was the structure matters. Is it a messy cap table? Is it strange terms or strange structure?
Oh, that's true. I've seen an angel takes like 20% for like a $100K check. I'm like, oh no. Like, what do we do with this cap table? I don't know how to raise. But no, it's very common. It shows that you've gotten other people to want to invest in you. So I don't know where that rumor came from.
That's a good point, Christine, on the positive signal, especially if one of those angel investors is a notable name and they gave you permission to share that name. It shows that you've passed a filter already. Someone else believes in you and what you're doing, and if it's an investor that's known, it can be a really positive signal.
Great. All right. So when it comes to deep tech startups, some of them require explanations on the technicalities. So is it good to include those technicalities in pitch decks? Like how much information should you really share when it comes to that?
That's such a good question because I understand very little about
Me too.
my advice is you always want to start 30,000 foot before you get into the weeds. You need to work your way down into the weeds. So my advice on the tech is that it has to be digestible, and if it's digestible, you have to give it in bites. You're not dumbing it down. You're saying, I would pause in an investor conversation and say, here's the high level of the tech. Would you like me to dive in deeper? Because you're showing I can. And that's really what's most important to me. But resist the urge to dive right into this, into the details of the tech. Start high level. And at some point, it could be the secondary conversation. You want to keep drilling down. But in the first meeting, I would keep a pretty high level, but always offer, would you like me to dive deeper?
Yeah, I agree. I work with some deep tech companies. It's usually just in the data room. They usually will high level mention tech only if it's a common question on, like, for example, my green hydrogen company. There was a green hydrogen bubble a couple of years ago, and no one wants to invest in it anymore. But so they were like, what's so different about your tech? How are you making it cheaper than like fossil fuels? So you had to do a high level explanation on how this technique was different from like other past companies. But at the end of the day, like, you want someone who has like no understanding, like very little understanding of space to understand your company. So, and it's still about team and market, in the beginning to understanding, and then I'll ask you about your tech after. So data room's fine.
All right, great. And it will be our last question for today. So when you're reviewing applications, what specific metrics or traction signals are you looking for, whether that's for a SaaS company or any other field? They mentioned SaaS, but I think just from a general perspective, can you share like what you look for when it comes to traction? I know that's a really broad question.
It's not. I'll go back to my initial scan of an application. It's about a team. It's about the problem they're solving, and then I get to traction when I look at when they started the company. Because if they've been around for years, then there should be a little traction. If they haven't been around a long time, traction might not be important at this point. But I'll go back to what Christina talked about earlier. Is traction at pre-sale comes in different forms. It could be an LOIs. It could be like we have a few pilots. We have 400 free users, but we're learning a lot in this process. So traction at the pre-sale is not my top priority if the company is very, very young. If they've been around a little bit, I start to look, did it plateau? Why? Well, we're pivoting. And then it depends is kind of a cop-out of an answer, but it depends on these things. So for me, what I'm trying to get a sense of is velocity.
Yeah, I'm looking more for that 20% growth month over month instead of a specific metric. I do see sometimes companies will make a mistake of they get an LOI that's like 10K, so they'll put but it's over, like let's say it's a 12K LOI, but it's for the year, right? So then they get like 12K in August, so they put like 12K for that month, and then like in September they say there's zero revenue, October zero revenue, and they got another LOI for like 12K in September or 24K in September. I would distribute that because honestly, like the way it's hitting you, the 12K is like 1K a year. If that makes sense, like from the start of the contract, because it's 12K for the year, so 1K a month. I mean, and just kind of like distribute that to show the growth you're getting. But I'm mostly glancing at problem solution, and those sound appealing, and the team looks remotely solid. I'll usually do a first call, but we go super early, to be honest.
Yeah, we like to play in the weeds at Techstars. The other metric I think is really, really important of pre-seed is if they're doing a few pilots, in addition to what they're learning. I love seeing how many of those pilots are converting to a customer. I had a really early stage company in my last class, and they had 8 pilots up there. And during the process of interviewing, found out that all 8 are renewing and becoming full-time customers, and 2 of them have expanded the contract. Great signal.
Yeah, paid pilots are a great signal. I really don't care about your unpaid pilots because I'm worried these are folks wasting your time and distracting with product direction. Example I'll give you is a company I worked with. They're like, our target customers VCs. Like, we have like 20 VCs meeting with us weekly doing pilots. Like, they're awesome. And I was like, early stage VCs don't have that much money to spend on software. That's weird. I'm like, are any of them paying you? And they're like, no. And as soon as I tried to, they all disappeared. So I was like, this is the wrong ICP for you. So yeah, paid pilots.
Paying does equate to commitment in some way. That's why we believe deeply in an investment accelerator. It creates a long-term relationship.
Yeah, even if you have to do like a 90% discount at the beginning because the product's really janky early, so just find a way to get them to pay you even a little bit because people commit with money and time, but you need both. Yeah.
We should just keep talking for hours. I know Jess is trying to get
That was perfect.
for hours.
Great advice. It's super helpful. Great way to close us out. And I know that we could honestly extend this session by hours and hours and hours. So I think that was a great overview. And thank you so much to everyone that joined us today. I did share both Christine and Dave's programs in the chat. So if you're interested in applying to their programs, applications do close on November 19th. So please take a look at those. And yeah, we'll see you for part 3 of the fundraising series next week. Those are going to be super exciting. We're going to have a mock investor interview where we're actually going to bring founders on stage to pitch, and then they'll give like feedback from our managing directors as well. So we'll see you for the next session. And Christine and Dave, thank you again for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for all the great questions for the 100 LinkedIn invites I have.
Yeah.
I think that's clear.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. See ya.